I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dan St. Paul, founder and software developer at Sports Data Solutions. Dan's going to tell us why he uses Deepnote's computational notebooks to teach sports analytics. The floor is yours, Dan.
Thank you, Alan. Sweet. So as Alan said, today I'm going to be giving you my top 5 reasons why I run a Deepnote first online course in sports analytics. I'll be presenting from the point of view of an educator slash mentor slash course creator, whatever you want to call it. But hopefully this will give sort of people getting new to the area or getting into the area, either as a learner or educator, enough to sort of consider picking up Deepnote or exploring it. Cool. So this is a bit what it was like without Deepnote for me as an educator. I don't know if you can see that GIF moving or not, but that's Leo in The Revenant. I believe he just survived a bear attack. But that was pretty much the face that I was making at times when I was teaching my course. And this is what it's like with Deepnote, or how I feel anyway. This is Leo here in The Wolf of Wall Street. I believe he is indeed very high on life, but so was I when I discovered Deepnote. And I sort of immediately knew when I discovered it that I had to change up my course to embrace it. So my course was originally sort of based on in GitHub, and we've sort of transitioned it so that it's Deepnote first. So yeah, here are my 5 reasons why. The first one is, I don't know if it's obvious to maybe people new to Deepnote who haven't explored it yet, but the first thing that struck me was that it was fully browser-based. And I'm not talking about Jupyter, how Jupyter is browser-based. I'm talking your whole project machine and environment. So you do need an internet connection, but there's no messing with any local file systems, paths, or your Windows subsystem for Linux, that thing. I like to tell my learners that sometimes, like when you open a new Deepnote project, it's almost like opening up a brand new laptop just specifically for your Python project or Julia or whatever. So yeah, this just makes life so much easier for both for me and my learners to start for me to mentor my learners, for them to start coding essentially. And if we compare that to what they used to have to do, which a lot of the guys have alluded to already, you know, setting up your local development environment, getting comfortable with a text editor, and maybe even getting GitHub if you really want to engage with some of the processes that we employ, like challenge-based work, pair programming, code reviews, etc. So yeah, the fact that it's just browser-based is already, you know, helps a lot. If you hadn't realized already, each notebook environment or each project environment is inherently collaborative. So it works sort of similar to how a Google Docs works. So you'll be able to see your guys on the top and see where everyone is on the notebook. But yeah, with this, the pair program can actually take place remotely without you having to screen share or telling someone to, you know, scroll down a bit more on the screen. Each project also has multiple sharing options. So you've got a plethora of like sharing options. You can share it so that they just have common access. So they can't, you know, edit your code and stuff like that, but they can have a look at your code and your outputs and make comments and stuff. So yeah, the fact that each project inherently, once you start it with the click of a button, is just collaborative just from the start, makes things like pair programming and what I'll talk about later, code reviews, really sort of simple and intuitive. And it works well for us because we've got a Slack. So if someone wants to, if someone has a problem with a challenge or their work, they'll literally be able to send us a link of their project in Slack. We'll be able to go onto it and just and see what's going on, instead of, you know, having a code snippet of an error message that doesn't really tell you anything. Yeah, and the last thing, which is probably actually the most important thing, is that each project is replicable. So you can replicate projects just by clicking the button that you see there, the duplicate button. So if you do see that button when you're exploring Deepnote, just click it and you'll see what I mean. And we're not even mentioning the UI and UX and data frame outputs and telesense, all that stuff, which is just built in and ready for you to crack on, really. So yeah, the environment itself, just the environment itself is really great. So I think Teams was probably the nail in the coffin for my GitHub course. Teams gave me everything I needed to run my course, its own resource space, learner management, easy resource creation and maintenance for myself, and a dead simple process to replicate sort of the resources or challenges simply via the duplicate button. And if you don't know, it's free for Teams, is free for educators. So you can create as many teams as you want, basically, just to store your resources and manage your learners. What I normally do is I generate a viewer link. So members in a team, there's access levels as well, and viewer is the most basic access. But even with a viewer membership, people can access the team, so they'll have the teams bit on their dashboard, and they'll be able to go on a resource and duplicate it, so they can run it in their own space. I really like the category tags as well. I would definitely make use of those even in your own personal space, just to soothe anyone who has any OCD or just to organize your resources. I found that like just the icing on the cake sort of thing. Yeah, so the last point is that there is no one way to use Teams. So I do believe there's so many different ways. I'm just using it this way, one way, but there's loads of different ways you can use it, especially if you're not an educator as well. There's so much more application for it. Cool. So integrations. Integrations was one of those things that when I went on to Deepnote, it was one of the first things I explored. One of the first things I was quite interested in because it was so far-fetched from what we were originally doing with cloud storage. So yeah, it was one of those things I was slightly torn on to begin with, just in terms of what I thought learners needs to know versus what they actually need to know. And what I ended up actually being really sold on this, on these integrations. And the basic reason behind that is because data storage is a big part of data analysis. So, but not everyone, is a database cloud or engineering expert or has access to them or has the time to become one. And to get to grips with, real full analytics workflows, storage services should be used. Otherwise, we'd just be storing static files in a local project folder, right? And we don't want that. We want the environment variables and the data to be external to the main code base. So the integrations really allow a learner to do this without much overhead for the learner in terms of their learning, etc. And that they start solving really complex problems real quick just with this simple integration, even if it's just a Google Drive. So I onboard this really like as soon as possible. I think one of the first challenges with environment variables is like a Twitter API challenge. So anything where they have to store like a password or a secret key or something like that would be super simple to onboard that. And maybe some sort of like web scraping challenge where they've got to scrape some data and store it in a cloud storage or an integration of their choice. Normally, what I do is I recommend these three: Google Drive, AWS, and MongoDB for specific things. But if you don't actually want your learner to get into cloud storage or anything like that, then the shared data sets are actually a really good option. So I would definitely recommend looking at shared data sets because it does the same thing, but you don't actually have to integrate or get the learner to go into or sign up for Google Cloud Storage or anything like that. I think what they actually do behind the scenes is just spin up a Google Cloud Storage bucket for you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but then you don't have to deal with Google Cloud Storage yourself, and the data set will simply appear as a extension to your machine. Yeah, otherwise, Google Drive I really recommend for beginners because especially if it's just a personal project, because it's literally just a click of a button to integrate, and then it would just be on the end of your sort of in the datasets folder within your machine, and then you'll be able to read datasets straight from Google Cloud Storage. So yeah, integrations, love them, embrace them, definitely. Don't be like me at the start. Yeah, so project history, this is kind of more alluding to version control, but I do believe, I think this is one of the topics in the discussions coming out, but I do believe getting GitHub should be a big part of the learning process. And I was glad to see Deepnote sort of make its own integration section for it. So it's got its own little section here for Git integration, which should help beginners to a certain extent. However, I also believe it shouldn't be a barrier to someone progressing, especially if they're like specific in data analysis. So if your learners are having a hard time version controlling with their projects with Git, I would honestly tell them to go and have a look at Deepnote snapshot feature, which is what you're sort of seeing here. So that you can create basically snapshots of your project as you go along. Normally, I'll tick everything off and just take project snapshots so I can see the ones I snap. And then what they'll give you is also a diff, so a code diff, so that you're going to see the differences between one version and maybe your current version or another version. And yeah, it works for notebooks and scripts, which is really good. Which, yeah, I honestly don't think I had I think what I used to tell people to do if they wanted to version control a notebook was just to turn it into a script and then version control it. So this is added another layer to it and simplicity to it. So yeah, I would definitely encourage them to have a look at that. Because it might even the fact that you're creating snapshots as you go along is almost like you're sort of trying to version control your project. So it might sort of build in that understanding and yeah, encourage them to version control their work. Yeah, so I think one of the things I do to encourage that is to actually tell them so snapshots are automatic. So you can see this is an automatic snapshot here. There is a setting in I think you have to go into your own personal settings or something, but you can actually turn automatic snapshots off so that it forces them to actually manually make snapshots as they go along. So that's just one thing that I do, but yeah, yeah, project history, definitely have a look at the snapshots, I reckon. So this is the last point, but it's not really a specific feature within Deepnote, but this is something I do quite a lot in my work. I do a lot of code reviews, and prior to Deepnote, it was a lot of work to actually to perform a code review. I personally think code reviews should be quick and fast, not to the extent where you're like not thinking about what you're reviewing and stuff. But yeah, they should be fast to a certain extent, and we were anything but previously, especially in the scenarios where you may have to try and replicate someone's project to perform a proper code review. Yeah, so yeah, the fact that we can just literally duplicate a project, test it in your own environment, and then give you the confidence to go back and onto their original project and make comments, whatnot, is a really good use case for Deepnote, I think. If there is any tips on this slide, I would probably advise to look at the code formatter. So Black, I think, is automatic. So each sort of block in your notebook can be formatted. So there's an automatic formatter, and I think it just formats with Black. So we actually, before a code review, we actually get our guys to use Black on all their code blocks, and even use Pylint for some cases. We try and Black for sure, Pylint sometimes, if they've got scripts and stuff as well. Another thing is actually maybe trying to utilize snapshots and diffs to get your message across. So if it's too much to put in a comment on one cell, maybe you can, go invite them to the project that you've sort of duplicated, and then get them to have a look at, a snapshot of what the project was when you first duplicated, and then a snapshot of what it is after a refactor or something like that. So yeah, the Deepnote itself has sped up my code review process to no means, and it means that I'm able to support more students essentially, or have the confidence to support more students because I'm not so bogged down by the code reviews. Yeah. So, I mean, there's so much more that I could probably allude to. And here are a few things that should really be in the top 5. But I am conscious of time. So I'll probably stop there, Alan.
Thanks for kind of the whole Deepnote side of things, which is maybe great for executing, but at the end of the day, what Deepnote can never do is kind of teach people how to think about problems in terms of data, right? Yeah. And I'm just wondering whether sports science specifically, do you find that the people you work with are naturally more adapted to thinking about problems from a data perspective, or do you find that you also need to teach that as well in addition to teaching them how to code and everything? Whereas that part done, they kind of understand what they want to do with data. It's just getting them to be able to do it.
Yeah, so a lot of the guys that I work with and girls are practitioners in sport already. So they'll be from a sports science background. They may be a performance analyst or a biomechanist or a physiologist or something like that. And they're already actually predisposed to handle data to a certain extent. So they'll probably be using Excel a lot and stuff like that. But it's more the practical application of solving a problem and how Deepnote sort of gets them from A to B really quickly, rather than sort of any Deepnote helping with the theory, if that makes any sense. Does that?
Yeah, it does. But I'm wondering whether they're already predisposed to understand the problems in terms of data, or do you find that you have to work with them to kind of think about problems from a data perspective? Or is this a field? Because I have no idea about this field. Is the field that's naturally predisposed to answering questions with data, or is it still something that hasn't, like, is it a nascent kind of thing that's only starting right now?
Yeah, I think it's definitely getting better because it's all out there. You know, sports is very data driven at the moment, especially in the performance side of things. And if they are in the performance side of things, then they probably already have some sort of idea of what they want to achieve with their data. So it's more about just showing them the tools and application of it, and them getting on with it, to be honest. Yeah, which is why our course is very sort of challenge based. So it'll be doing a certain sort of thing, and then maybe getting them, because I don't think any sort of coding is particularly a solitary thing. I think it can be done solitary, but I think it's a collaborative thing. Making something producing a solution is collaborative. So yeah, being able to do that at the same time as well and encourage that, it's just completely changed the way we drive our course, really.
I teach life sciences students, but I'd love to do more on sport. So where's a good place to look for great data science questions in sport that we can work on?
You can talk to me after if you want.
Okay. That was quick. Well done.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well done. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for the question.